Hey guys, what's going on? This is Kyle at Projection Hub, and today I'm going to be showing you how to write a business plan for a pediatrics office or a pediatrician. And so when we get into things, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you and walk through an entire fictitious example of a business plan written specifically for a pediatric office. And then as I'm going through that, I'm going to highlight 5 key points that I think will make the business plan really shine, especially when it comes to applying for financing. So as I mentioned, my name is Kyle, and in my time before Projection Hub, I was an SBA loan officer for almost 7 years. And so while I was doing that in that capacity, I would work with business owners and startups to review, their loan application, gather their documents, review their business plan, review their financial projections, walk them through the loan process and underwriting and all of that. And so during my time getting to do that, I did get to work with a few, startup medical offices and reviewing all of their material and actually get some of those approved for financing. And so that's some of the experience I'm bringing to today. And, also Projection Hub, we've helped more than 50,000 small businesses create their financial projections for their loan applications, their pitch decks, their business plans, you name it. And many, many different types of medical offices, even recently some pediatricians specifically. And yeah, I've even helped write a few business plans for a pediatric office. So that, experience is going to be helpful as we're going through this today. So as I mentioned, I'm going to be going through a free business plan template specifically for a pediatric office. So you can grab a copy of that down in the description below. It's yours to use. You'll need to change the words, but like the structure is there, will prove as a very good guide as you kind of go through and rewrite your own business plan. And I'm going to go through and show you those 5 key points today. So if at any point you like today's video, give us a thumbs up, consider subscribing to the channel. That really helps us as a fellow small business. And if you have any questions, leave a comment down below. We are pretty responsive down there. And you can also just email us at support@projectionhub.com and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, so here we have it, our pediatric care, medical practice, pediatrician office, whatever you would name it, business plan template. Again, this is a free template. You can grab your own copy down the description below. It's fully structured and kind of filled out for a fictitious example. A couple things to point out: that it's obviously going to be a little generic, and that will be one thing we talk about today as we go through the business plan, is how to make things more specific and how that can really benefit your business plan. But it should serve as a really good guide as the structure. You can just kind of write your own words into each section, and by the end of it, you should have a nice filled out business plan. But a couple of things I want to point out before we really dive into it. The first thing is the purpose of your business plan. Maybe it sounds obvious. It isn't to educate the reader or the audience on, what a pediatrician does or really, what all happens at the clinic. It's really to explain to and demonstrate, presumably for a lender, most likely, your specific plan to go from square one, not being open, and then launching, to being successful. So repaying a loan and reaching whatever goals you outline in the business plan. So maybe that sounds really obvious, but the best business plans don't just describe what you're going to do. They explain your specific steps that you're going to take to launch the business, to grow the business, to reach your goals. And the better job you do at demonstrating and explaining exactly what you're going to do to be successful, the more that sounds realistic and attainable, that's when people want to give you money, right? When they start to be like, yeah, this game plan seems very reasonable. And if they follow through on this, then this will be successful. That's really what we want the reader to come away with, the lender to come away with when they're reading your business plan. So as I mentioned, we're going to go through this whole business plan. I'm going to talk about each section. And then there will be 5 key points we come to, and you'll see in the template, we've got them all marked up in those sections, that I think are 5 key areas to really take a business plan from just okay to really great. And I'm going to also provide some examples of those 5 key points and a little bit of a demonstration on how you can do that to your business plan too. So keep in mind, everything you see in the business plan should be in your business plan in some way, shape, or form. There's kind of like, I'll use the words minimum requirement in a lot of places. And really what this business plan is going to show is going to be kind of like the minimum bar. It's the minimum requirement. And then those 5 key points are the opportunities to really make it go above and beyond. So this word is spelled incorrectly. So that's what we're going to do. So first things, and it'll take us a couple sections of the business plan to get to the first key point. And then once we get to it, we'll move pretty quickly through all 5. But right off the bat here, you can see our table of contents. And something I'm going to point out is this business plan isn't super long. Now, again, this is a fictitious example. It's a little generic in the way that it's filled out in some of the sections, but contrary to popular belief, I think a business plan shouldn't be really long. A lot of people think that the longer the business plan, the better. Like that's what they think is expected of them. And I think that the opposite is true. Now, obviously you don't want a 5-page business plan, but that 15 to 25 page sweet spot is really great, because if you scatter your entire business plan, your important information over 50 pages, 75 pages, 100 pages, that gets really lost. Because I can just tell you from personal experience, your lender's not going to read every word of a 100-page business plan. There's just no way. They're going to be doing skimming. They're going to be jumping around looking for specific information. So the more you can jam pack the important information into 15, 20, 25 pages, it makes it harder for those important details to get missed, which is what we want. And your loan officer is probably going to read your business plan once, maybe twice. The underwriters may read the business plan, or they might just take notes that were gathered from the loan officers. The thing they're going to really spend a lot of time on is the financial projections. And I'm not saying that as being biased as Projection Hub, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So let's go ahead and start going through these sections. First up, we've got the executive summary. So I want you to think about the executive summary as kind of like the cover letter to a resume for a job application. This is your first impression of the business plan, apart from, having a nice cover letter, or, a cover letter, I guess, our front page. But this is going to be their first insight into what they're about to read. And so it's good to make a good impression. This isn't going to get you approved, but it is a really nice tee up for the rest of the business plan. So, we've got a nice overview introduction to what exactly where's your pediatrician office going to be located? Are you going to have a specialty? That kind of thing. Just a nice little introduction. And these objectives are important if you make them good objectives. So let me clarify. These listed right here are not good objectives. They're not measurable, and I wouldn't include a goal if it's not measurable, because it doesn't really mean much. So these ones just say establish it as a foremost destination for pediatric care in Indianapolis. I think a better short-term goal would be, we want to be profitable by month 18. We want to have X number of patients by month 18. Something attainable and measurable that is a marker of success in a relatively short term. Because if that goal feels attainable, then that's a big win for your lender. They're like, yes, I see where they're trying to get to, and that's a really good goal, and you can measure whether you were successful or not. Same thing is true with long term. We want it to be measurable. And so this one, we see PPOD Pediatrics reaching neighboring communities, foster education programs, satellite clinics, potentially open satellite clinics. So it's kind of just saying some nice things. We'd like to do all these things and grow, which is great. But I think it'd be, if your game plan really is to open up an additional clinic, or, launch an educational program, like set date targets for those, because that signifies that you are serious. And it kind of paints the picture of where you're hoping to take this. If you say I would like to open up a second and third location in neighboring cities by, year 3 and year 5, that sets a different tone for this business plan to your lender. They're like, okay, they're not only saying success is to just get this loan paid back and be profitable this one clinic, they want to open up 3 of them, right? So it kind of just reframes the perspective as the lender's reading through your business plan. Mission statement, is great, but it's a little fluffy. You should include it, but that's, again, not going to be world changing. Keys to success are important. Again, try to make them specific if you can on like what actually would be a key to your success. So that's going to be, location specific, your target patient specific, that kind of thing, rather than, just being like, obviously you're going to be focused on children, going to be focused on families, but like, make it catered to you specifically and what's going to work in your location. One thing that is missing from this executive summary that I would consider adding is a little financial summary, a little financial introduction. That could be, again, if you're seeking financing, that could be like your total startup costs. How much of that are you looking to get as a loan? How much are you investing personally? And do you have like an estimated break-even date based on your projections? Again, that can just kind of, especially if it's a lender reading this, right after the first page of information, they realize like, okay, this is how much they're going to be asking for. This is what they need to get started, and this is where they want to go, rather than getting halfway into the business plan, 3/4 into the way into the business plan, before they actually start to see those things that are going to set the context for the business. All right, moving along, the company history. So this is kind of just like an extension of the executive summary. It's, you can start to paint the picture of the character, the personality of the business a little bit more. So getting into the actual, founder story, the owner story, why are you doing this? You have the legal structure of the business, which is important. The unique selling proposition. This is very similar to like the goals we just talked about. Unique selling proposition is only as good as how specific it is. So, it's not super helpful when you just say, we're going to offer the best care. Okay, well, that's what every pediatrician is hoping to do. They want to offer the best care. So is there something that you can truly put your stamp on and say like, we do this better than we will do this better than any of our competitors, and here's how, or they will have a better experience because of this, or we will offer this specific type of care or service because of this certification or this equipment or something like that. So this is your chance to really talk about what actually is going to set your office apart from a different one, and how are you going to like follow through on that, and if that makes a difference on being successful or not. And then this little target market this is just a little introduction to the target market, because again, we're going to have a whole sections based on that kind of stuff. So again, try to avoid the, again, pediatrician office is pretty obvious. They're offering care services to children, to families. And so you're probably not going to say this specific type of kid versus this kid. That, is a little dicey to do that. And so, you're probably not going to get a whole lot more drilled in than that, rather than maybe, if there's a certain level of demographic or like family income or, different things like that based on the services you're offering or where you're going to be located. But, this is a little different than like you have a e-commerce brand and you're trying to attract a very specific type of customer. So that one's not too difficult. Okay, market analysis. In the end of this section, we'll get into our first key point, and then we'll kind of go through them pretty quickly through the rest of the video. And so here in our market analysis, we're going to talk about the industry overview. So, this doesn't mean like the Shark Tank thing where it's like, hello sharks, the pediatric industry is a $3 trillion industry and we just want to steal 1% of that. That's not what we're doing. This is more, you are demonstrating to the reader, the lender, what's the landscape of the pediatric market, exactly where you want to operate. So in the area where you could potentially get a patient from, how's it looking? Is it growing? Is there a huge demand and not enough supply? Is there a lot of new pediatric offices? So like, just give a little context. You kind of like want to spill the tea a little bit if you're an insider. What's the state of it? Because your lender, might live in the same market and might be familiar with things, but they're really looking for the inside scoop and that you kind of know what you're talking about. So they're going to look at you as the expert and why you're doing what you're doing. Competitor analysis, probably pretty straightforward, except that, this is going to be your chance to, where this business plan fictitiously is written into like an Indianapolis area, which is where I'm located. And more specifically, I'll show like the Fishers area, which is kind of like an affluent suburb just outside of Indianapolis. And, it's a little bit spread out. So depending on where you're planning to open your office, like how densely populated is it? How urban is it? Are you in a rural community? Depending upon what that is, that changes the radius of competitors you should be aware of. So I would say where I'm at, which is kind of like a suburb, it's a little spread out, but there's a good chunk of people. I would want to know every direct competitor within a 20-minute drive, maybe even more than that, half-hour drive. So that could be, 15 miles, 20 miles, 10 miles. Like your location might change if you're located in like a densely populated urban area. That might be a smaller diameter, right? That might be, 3 miles or 5 miles. So keep that in mind, but you should know, and with that range where you think realistically you can reach patients and get patients from, you should know every direct competitor that's in that radius. And then more specifically, probably the 3 to 5 most direct competitors. So the ones that most closely resemble what you're going to be doing and what you're going to be providing, and proximity, like how physically close are they to you. I would list them, and I would say, what are they really good at, or what are their strengths? So maybe they've been around for a long time. Maybe they have a really great doctors there, or they have a really great kid experience because they have a special playroom or a wing, or something like that. So if you could know that information about them, list that. The best way to find out what they're good at is probably just to read through their Google reviews. That's also a really good way to find out what they're not good at. And so I would say list their strengths, but then also list what you think might be a weakness or an opportunity for you. So a good example is maybe in a small town, there's only one pediatrician, and maybe it's a family doctor or something like that. So maybe it's not even just a pediatrician, and they've been around forever, and they have pretty terrible reviews because they don't have a ton of competition. So you're going to mention like they are the only game in town, and they've been around for a long time, and they've had a lot of loyal patients. That's their strength, but their weakness might be, that they've slacked on that patient experience, their bedside manner, whatever you want to call it, and that's an opportunity for you. So list those competitors by name and try to include what they're doing well, what they're not doing well. Okay, target market analysis. That is, again, we talked about that up here. For this type of business, it's a little difficult because you're serving kids and you're trying to reach parents, those families. So you can talk about that a little bit more about, if that's trying to reach the kids and the families in the school system, or, where are you going to seek out those kids? Where are you going to seek out those families to attract them? And you can talk about that more here. And the market opportunities is kind of exactly what it sounds like. So again, in your specific town, city situation, what have you identified as an opportunity that if you can really take advantage of it, that would be good for you? Is that there's a really large, manufacturing facility being built in town, and that's going to attract several new jobs. And so there's many new families expected to be coming in, and, there's going to be a higher demand for pediatric services or something like that. So you can get a little creative if there are any of those market opportunities, or maybe it's a long-standing doctor's office is closing up, or a pediatrician's retiring, or different things like that. You can talk about that. Okay, we finally made it to our first key point, and then we will go through these quickly. And that is, so it's one thing to talk about all these things I just outlined. You should do that. These, again, minimum requirements. You should write all of these things as they relate to your business. Our first way to make our business plan shine, and we've included some examples here, is provide some specific example of local research to demonstrate and prop up your point that there is in fact room in the market for the business. And so one not free way, or a free example of this, would be like a market research report or market research study. People hire someone to, survey locations and measure, cars that drive past a location and all of that kind of stuff. I'm not recommending you have to do that. I'm just saying that's an obvious example of what market analysis would be. And then you could, demonstrate your findings and put graphs and charts and tables and all that kind of stuff in here. But some free ways to do this. Again, you could do a survey for free among parents in the community. A lot of this might depend on, are you already acting as a pediatrician? Because, if you are practicing already, that might be kind of weird to do that in your community, and, or you might just be mentioning that to some of your patients, or how you go about that. Maybe you're a newly licensed pediatrician and you're opening from scratch, and then you don't really have that conflict, and so you could be doing some surveying and whatnot. But one little trick I like to do is perform some keyword research. So what I mean by that is you can go to a tool called Google Ads or Google AdWords. You can create a free account, and then you get access to this free, it's over here, there's tools, and then keyword planner. And this allows us to do something kind of cool. So what we can do is we can simulate and see how often are people searching, how often are people Googling specific terms in a specific location. And so I just searched pediatrician near me, and I set my location to Fishers, Indiana, which again is that suburb. It's about 250,000 people northeast of Indianapolis. And it's going to do a few things. One, it's going to show us related keywords, so we can see what are people searching for that might be related to that term. How often are those things actually being searched on a monthly average? And then the most important thing I think it demonstrates is this trend data. So I care a little less about the 3-month change because that could be seasonal, but the year-over-year change is really what I'm looking for. And the reason this column is important is because this is comparing, now or, this 12 months compared to that prior. So we can actually see, are more people searching for these phrases than they were last year? And that is an overall representation of, is there a growing need, a growing demand, a growing number of people searching for things we're interested in? So we can see in this specific area, there's a 40% increase year over year in people looking for pediatricians near me, 100% increase in pediatric urgent care near me. Now, you'll notice these average monthly searches is pretty low. Like I'm not, this isn't hold a ton of weight with me for how many people are searching it. But the larger the city or the area or whatever that you would look for, and pediatricians are one of those things that people might travel for. I would consider for my kids traveling 30 minutes, 45 minutes longer if that's what I needed to do to find a good pediatrician. And so that's going to increase the pool of people searching for that. But this is good. It is positive that there's more people searching for that. So that's at least some inclination that, someone wouldn't search for that if they didn't have one. They're doing that because they're looking for a new doctor or to change doctors or find one. And so that's a nice indication that there's a growing need for that. So this is obviously only one half of the equation. This is just demand. And then the supply half of it is that competitor research I was talking about. So if we know there's a growing demand, but there hasn't been a new pediatrician in town in 10 years, that's a pretty good indication that there's room in the market, okay? So you can do exactly what I just demonstrated, grab some screenshots of this, add that into your business plan. That's some nice research to prove that you know what you're talking about and that you've done some research. Okay, moving along to marketing and sales strategy. Okay, we're not gonna get into the weeds on like how I would recommend advertising or marketing your office or your clinic. You're gonna know what to do best there. So this is gonna give you some guidance on that, but you're gonna outline exactly what your services are going to be. Are there types of specific, and I would include pricing for those services, like pricing to the patients and, what kind of insurance you're gonna accept and all that kind of stuff. How are you going to reach new patients? So maybe you're gonna talk about, well, post on social media. We're going to have a website. We're going to, do some emailing and advertising. Like definitely include all those things. Those are minimum requirements again to include in there. But what I want to talk about, key point number 2, and that's demonstrating how you're actually going to acquire customers. So it's one thing to say, we're going to post on social media and have a website and whatnot, and then people will come and find us. I mean, you should be doing those things so that people can find you easily. But one thing to really make your business plan shine is demonstrating how are you going to increase the likelihood that when it comes to open up your doors that people will actually be there. And a medical practice is a little tricky because there's not a ton of creative ways to do this because there's things around like non-competes and the timing of your certifications and doing all of that. So like in a non-medical industry, I could recommend like start as a side hustle on the side. And then, you get a little business and some recurring customers that you can show your lender that like, hey, I've actually already made money doing this and we're ready to go full time. Like, that's a really good example of demonstrating that you have some customers and you have some traction. A little harder to do that in the medical field, but there's some ideas here. I really liked example number 2, and that's launch a podcast or YouTube channel, and you could start reaching, by providing education. So again, this is going to depend on your position. Are you a newly certified pediatrician? Because there's probably certain types of advice you need to be careful giving if you don't have a certain certification. Are you already a practicing pediatrician and you can kind of build that audience? And so if you would change practices or, start a new one on your own, how many of those patients can follow you from the old practice? So there's certainly some things to be careful about, but what I would recommend to you is to don't be shy to include those things in your business plan. So, if you, again, maybe you're working in someone else's practice and you want to start your own and you have the ability to have patients follow you, talk about how many patients you think will follow you and include that. That's your traction. That's probably the best thing you could put in your business plan is, yeah, I'm going to have this many patients probably follow me. Boom. That's right there. That's right there is your traction. So include that. But if you need to get a little bit more creative, like if you don't have that situation, doing something like that, because this does a few things. One, it shows that you're likely to have people actually show up at your clinic. And two, that you're willing to, hustle and work hard and try some things, be creative to actually get to attract customers rather than just assuming people are going to show up. Okay, moving along to operations and management. Again, this is another one of those sections where kind of a minimum requirement. You're just going to talk about the things that it takes to actually operate a pediatric office. You're going to know those things. This section is kind of pre-filled out in a way that, it'll give you some nice placeholder spots to write in what you know about those sections. But what I want to talk about is this key point number 3. And that is assuming you're trying to get financing, for your build out costs or equipment or working capital or what have you, is you really want to make sure the takeaway from this section is that your lender is confident that you know what you're doing, you know what you're getting yourself into. So again, it being a medical field, it's a little more black and white than non-medical fields. So in non-medical fields, you need to, someone might be coming from a completely unrelated industry to open up a different type of business, and they need to try to demonstrate why they can do that. And the best way to give that, if they don't have all the experience they need, are they supplementing that with like partners or key employees or managers that do have some experience that's really relevant? And those together combined give lenders confidence, like, okay, them as a team, they know what they're doing, they're going to be just fine. So in the medical field, it's going to be a little bit different because, if you're a board certified pediatrician, you already have a lot of the required skill sets to operate in a practice or a clinic. So that aspect of things is more black and white. So I would say when it comes to like the management of the office, that side of things, like if you've never operated your own clinic before, there's going to be a set of skills there that you may not have. There's a set of experience that you may not have. So obviously you've got the pediatric side covered and the medical certification and skills, but what about the office management, the business management side of things? And if that is new to you, then how are you going to supplement that experience? Are you bringing in someone that does have experience managing a doctor's office before, or being a secretary in a medical office before, or a scheduler, or that kind of thing? So you need to talk about who are you going to have on your team surrounding you to give your lenders the confidence that, like, okay, you got all the pieces of the puzzle, so you're going to be okay. Because it's a red flag for lenders if they have any concern that you're missing a piece of that or a component of that. Okay, moving along, this is kind of the big section, financial projections. Now remember at the beginning I mentioned like almost half of the business plan is the financial projections. So look at that. Yeah, pages 10 all the way through the appendix. Almost half of the business plan is financial projections. And so we've got a breakdown of our startup costs in here. We've got a little, I know it's kind of zoomed out, but this is like a chart of key like financial KPIs specific to a pediatric office. So we've got like number of new patients per year for 5 years, obviously projections. On average, how much does each patient generate per year? Average pay per doctor, average revenue per doctor. We've got different things. We've got revenue, cost of goods sold, gross profit, net income, operating expense percentages, our monthly overhead, so like our recurring operating costs. And then we've got 5-year financial performance statements for an income statement, cash flow projections, and a balance sheet. And then we've got like a little break-even part here and sales growth. So this is usually the part where a lot of business owners or startups or first-time, founders like get a little overwhelmed. Quick plug, that was created using this financial projection template. So you might be rolling your eyes. It's okay. Let me explain. You have to have financial projections. They are arguably the most important part of your business plan and the part that your lender is going to spend the most time reviewing. And so you can either hire someone to do it, like an accountant, or someone like us. You can hire us to do it if you'd like. You can try to make them from scratch all by yourself, which I would not encourage you to do. That would be a bold decision. Or 3, use a tool or a template that's made by someone like a CPA or an accountant, like this one. And so this is what I used to generate those projections. It's quite easy to do. I've linked to this projection template down in the description below. You can grab your own copy if you'd like. Also, if you stick around to the end of the video, I'll give you a promo code to get a discount on it. but we're just entering information on these blue tabs, and we're only editing these blue boxes. So we're going to put things like the assets we need to purchase. Are we going to have any investors? Are we going to have any loans, which we probably will? This page I know looks overwhelming. It's not. Again, we're only editing the blue boxes. We're estimating how we're going to acquire our patients. What is our menu of services and the pricing? Are we going to have like a membership offering? So again, we're only editing the blue boxes. And then we're going to have our monthly recurring expenses, so our overhead, what are our estimates there, and then our payroll, our salary, our estimated. So and you can plan out, future employees when you plan. We're planning to hiring a doctor in year 2, and additional nurses then. So you can kind of plan that out, and then it's going to create all of the charts and graphs that you saw in the business plan that your lender is going to need. And those will all automatically update as soon as you update any of these if you need to tweak numbers. So again, I've linked that down in the description below. You can grab your own copy. Again, I'll give you a promo code at the end of the video. But financial projections are not key point number 4. You have to have financial projections. Key point number 4 is they need to be realistic and within industry norms. And maybe you're wondering, well, how do I know what's typical for the industry for all of the projections? And I have a not super flashy answer for you, but I'm going to demonstrate. And that's just going to be to Google it. So if you create projections using something like that template, what I would do is just look up what's typical for your industry. Okay. So again, you can Google things one at a time, like what's typical profit margin for a pediatrician. You can use a tool like ChatGPT to give a bunch of the recommendations all at once. So for example, I asked, what about a profit margin for a pediatric office? 5 to 10% range, can be influenced by a lot of things, but sure, let's assume 5 to 10%. I'm gonna come over here and look at my profit margin. A loss in the first year, not surprising, 13%, 17%, 24%, 24%. So I'm a little bit higher than what the internet said the industry average is. So why is that? It's not so far off that it would probably be eyebrow raising, but that's the kind of thing you can do. Any of these numbers you find in your projections, you can search for a benchmark for that, and then just try and dial in your projections so nothing seems super out. So you're gonna fill it out. So what makes sense to you to the best of your knowledge, and then benchmark it and work backwards from there. And that's gonna be a really good way to ensure that what you're giving to your lenders isn't going to, get you laughed out of the room. And it's really hard if you make a bad first impression with your numbers. It's really hard to kind of come back from that, because that would require you to bring back a different set of numbers. So if you're like, oh, hold on, give me 1 second, and then you come back and your numbers are all different, it's like, well, you just changed your business plan overnight, So it's good to get it right the first time. And then that's going to bring us to the end of the business plan, and we just have one more key point. And this one, don't write into your business plan, but it's more of an encouragement to you to be prepared. And that's being prepared for kind of the skin in the game conversation with your lender. So, if you need a $100,000 loan, just like buying a house, your lender's not going to give you 100% of that, right? You're going to be required to put in 10%, 20% of the costs of that startup. And so you're going to need to have that cash available. So that's one thing. And then you are going to have to sign a personal guarantee. I don't care what anyone has ever told you about keeping the loan in the business name versus the personal name. That doesn't matter. You will have to personally guarantee the loan. So if the business doesn't pay back the loan, you will be responsible for it personally. And if you fail to pay that back, you're going to lose your investment, your personal, deposit, if you will, in the business and the assets in the business. And so be prepared for that, have realistic expectations. But another thing I like to mention is, the lender's going to want to see the loan collateralized. And a pediatric office is probably not going to have enough equipment in it to collateralize the loan unless you're buying the building with the loan proceeds. Then that's going to be your collateral. But assuming there's somewhat of a collateral shortfall, your lender's probably either going to want to see you have a cosigner or, have some sort of outside income to help pay back the loan, or a personal asset like a second mortgage on a house or something like that to help prop up the loan itself. And so I'm not saying you have to do that. My encouragement to you is just be prepared to know what you're willing to give and what you're not, and being okay with walking away from the loan if that's, they want something that you're not comfortable with. Or if you think that a cosigner might even be a thing they would ask for, think about that person in advance, and maybe even ask them in advance before you even know if you're going to need them, right? If that's a parent or a friend or a sibling or whatever, you might have that conversation with them. Just be like, if I am required to have a co-signer do this, like, is that something you consider doing? So that way, when the point comes up and your lender says, you know, hey, it'd be really great if we have a co-signer, say, yep, that's okay. I've already asked so-and-so. I can confirm with them, but I think they're going to be willing to do it. And that's going to help things move along really quickly. And your lender's going to really appreciate that. Okay, and there you have it. That is how to write a business plan for a pediatric office and 5 ways to make it shine. I'm going to grab that promo code for you. And there's a full video on how to fill out those projections as well. Projection template comes with free support and a free review, so you'll be taken care of. But if you use PH20BP, that'll get you 20% off the business plan. There's a link to it right here, as well as down in the description below. But thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, comment down below or email us at support@projectionhub.com. We'd be happy to help you. And we wish you the best of luck, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.